Welcome to Building Texas with Justin McKenzie and Summer Babarek. Sponsored by the Boerne-Kendall County Economic Development Corporation and Das Greenhouse. And now, here's your host, Justin McKenzie.
Welcome to Building Texas on Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. Boerne is growing, so is Texas. And what does that mean for you? How can you get involved and make an impact? We're Building Texas, and we sit down with the builders, creators, and entrepreneurs serving our region. And today I'm excited to have Sam Riehn in studio with us and to share his story. He's got an interesting story, particularly with the pandemic and everything that came in. And I'm thrilled to have Sam as a member of our community and a leader in our community. So Sam, welcome to Boerne Radio.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. And I've never been to Boerne Star before, but this is a great location. Very cool.
We are recording at the Boerne Star today, and we're recording in the archives room. And it's neat because there's a lot of history. I mean, you're looking at 60 years of newspapers around us, and it really is how Boerne was formed and built. And I always like to give a nod to the history of who built Boerne. But here on Building Texas, we're talking about impact. And Sam, I think you have a big impact in the work you do in a number of different ways, and not just locally, but across the country. So let's start with getting to know who is Sam Riehn and where would we recognize you from?
Oh, awesome. I appreciate that. And yeah, on the archive room, like you can see and hear us on, but I wish you could smell. It's awesome. You can smell the history in here. All these old newspapers. So I'm Sam Riehn. I started in the Air Force as a contracting officer, came out of the Air Force Academy in 2013 and went straight into special operations. So that landed me close to Texas. That's where I met my wife. I was at Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico, just on that side of Texas Tech. Love it. And anyway, so I love the mission there. My job was to buy things they needed. And so I'm running around Afghanistan with bags of cash and buying things that they need the next day, water bottles, goats, whatever it is. And it felt like I was having an impact on the mission. I got to know the warfighters and love that. So then my next duty location, I came back from Afghanistan and I ended up here in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. I was doing offensive cyber acquisition. So I was came down here to write contracts for spooky things in the cyber world. And that was exciting. I thought, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to be able to, get my clearances, get behind they call it the green door, the secret door. And I'm going to see some alien technology. You hear about it on the news now. But to my surprise, it wasn't that way at all. I got back there and realized, okay, we're a couple steps ahead of a typewriter in here. And we are falling behind quickly to our competitors, much less our commercial partners. We're kind of losing an arms race. And it's not the cyber guys' fault. Everybody in the cyber community is super smart and they're very competent. But problem is we're not getting them the shiny new toys they need as fast as they need it. And so, an example would be it'd take us 9 to 12 months to put something on contract, and a new iPhone generation would come out while we're trying to get this contract done. And so whatever we were trying to buy was obsolete by the time we bought it. And so we just weren't moving at the speed of need. And it was very frustrating to feel like, hey, I'm causing these guys to lose an arms race in cyber, but zooming out, it's happening all over the DoD, whether it's AI or space or robotics, we've kind of gotten really slow. And so, that's what I was up for another deployment back to Afghanistan. I had my second baby on the way. So I decided, it's time for me to get out, but I wanted to stay close to the mission and trying to help, impact the warfighter. And I felt like if we don't, we might be disrupted in the next war from what I was seeing. And so, I got out and started working with tech startups and trying to help them do business with DoD, because I thought this is where innovation's happening. That like, if we have a chance, it's going to come from these guys. And we just need to help them do business with the government. And their challenge is everything's too slow. But when I was in the Air Force and, I was frustrated with how slow it was, I would try to go to like Black Hat and some of these, larger cyber conferences and talk to, these startups and say, hey, come work with us. We need your technology. And they would always say, no, I've got to show my investors traction next month at my board meeting, or else I don't raise the next round. Like, I can't wait 9 to 12 months for a contract. So Lockheed, Boeing can, but the startups really can't. And so that was my whole mission, is like try to help get these guys funding faster and get them plugged into the DoD faster. So we're actually meeting that speed to need problem. So.
Well, you're listening to Building Texas on Boerne Radio 103.9 FM, and we're here with Sam Riehn, who has founded a solution and founded a company that helps us meet that need. You're helping the warfighters get technology faster, and faster is relative to the division that we're working with. But let's talk about SBIR and what is that, and what does it mean to take technology from the private sector and bring it into DoD, Department of Defense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the DoD is just, they're very similar to private sector. I mean, we have schools, we have hospitals, we have enterprise buyers on the government side. So just like, if you were selling like Slack or some kind of communication application, the same strategies you would use on the commercial side, they call it land and expand. I want to get some users to adopt the technology. I want them to actually put their hands on it and, be a buyer, be a end user, give me feedback on how I can improve it. But the idea is like, I want to keep getting more and more and more customers until somebody at the enterprise level says, hey, I need to buy this for the entire organization. And, that's very similar to how we're selling to the government, to the DoD. But the problem is when you talk to these customers and these DoD, we're talking to Air Force. I'm sitting across the table like you. We're explaining what this innovative product does, what this technology can do for the Air Force, and they're nodding up and down. They're, yes, this sounds great. I would love to have this. But the next thing you hear them say is, well, I don't have any budget. I don't have any money. And it's not that they don't have money. They've got budget, but it's all spoken for. Like they have to think about their requirements 12 to 24 months out, get permission from Congress to spend it. So when you're talking to them, if you weren't on their radar 2 years ago, it's too late. Like every dollar has a name. And so what they'll say is they'll say, come back to me next fiscal year. I'll have money for you then. And that's what starts to lead to that long sales cycle, that 12 months acquisition timeline that I was talking about, is it's a funding problem. And so what we do is we help find the money. So I've got an interested buyer, I've got an interested customer, I've got a technology from this startup that, meets a need. We just got to go find funding to get these guys to work together. And that's really where the Small Business Innovation Research Program came in. Is when I got out in 2019 out of the Air Force, they were just starting AFWorks, and that's kind of the Air Force innovation. And now they manage their whole SBIR program, but it's their innovation program. It was just starting out of Austin, and it just happened to be I'm living in Boerne, Texas. We moved out here. We were in Lackland. We moved out here to Boerne in 2020, and have been here ever since. But very close to kind of where innovation. The Air Force started to recognize, hey, we've got a real serious need here to innovate, and they've started to put big budget behind it. So the SBIR program is $3 billion per year. It's set aside by Congress. They say, hey, you can only spend this money on small business and innovation, small business innovation. And so about $1 billion of that goes to the Air Force, Space Force. Air Force gets about $660 million a year or so, and they're spending it out of Austin, Texas. AFWorks has a couple offices. They're in Vegas and DC, but really, like, they're where a lot of their people are in Austin, Texas, and they did that on purpose. They thought, oh, well, that's where the startups are. That's where the innovation is, and so they put office down there. And really, what the SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, is about is Congress kind of created this back in the 80s as an economic stimulus program. They wanted small business to work with the DoD. And so the problem with why it's kind of been an underutilized, or nobody's really thought about the SBIR program, is the way they've been running it. So in the 80s, they started with what they call specific topics. And this is where they put out a laundry list of problem statements a couple times a year. And it would be things like, build me a lightsaber, it's got to be 3 feet long, 2 inches wide. And they would be super descriptive, prescriptive problem statements. And
are they presetting the game when they do that?
Yeah, exactly.
In some cases.
Absolutely. So the problem is there's not a lot of companies walking around that can build lightsabers. And the ones that do are now all competing with each other because they've got similar solutions to the same problem statement. So what that turned into was, hey, we've got who can out white paper the other company. And it's like whoever could out science the other company and be more aggressive on the work plan and things like that. And the problem is, okay, now they're kind of over promising and under delivering. They wanted to win the contract, right?
I hear that as you're selling a presentation, not a real solution.
Exactly. So I'm telling them I can build this thing, that they asked for. I can build a lightsaber, whether I have built a lightsaber or not, or whether I intend to commercialize lightsabers. Yep. So maybe I'm just trying to win the R&D contract, and that's kind of what it turned into. Is in the 20 years, 1980s to 2000s, you had this boom of what they called SBIR or SBIR mills. like factories, because there was just companies that had a bunch of PhDs on their team, and they would just write white papers and win these R&D contracts. Well, the problem is they would spend all this time and money in research and development, and it was never making it to the field. Like less than 1% of technology acquired through SBIR was getting to the warfighter, which is the whole point, you know? And so that's why, you know, in 2019, they said, we need to like just flip this whole program on its head. And Dr. Will Roper took over acquisition of Air Force, and he said, we're going to do away with the specific topics. We're going to have what they call an open topic. So they say, we don't know what our problems are. We need industry, to tell us what you have. What are your solutions? And we'll look at them all.
Well, we're sitting here today with Sam, understanding how the Air Force and really all of the services purchase and acquire innovative technology. And we're using terms like SBIR and SBIR, and I've been confused in this cycle for a number of years. So they're the same thing. Some people will refer to the acronym SBIR. Mm-hmm. If you've been in the business for a little while, you're going to say SBIR.
Shorten it.
Yeah. But talk to me about the acronym. What does it really mean? And then where's the limitation of that buying group?
The limitation of the buying group. So SBIR is Small Business Innovation Research. That's the name of the program, but you can tell by the name they're targeting it at small business. So to be eligible for this program, you have to have less than 500 employees. That's a big size. Company. That's a big company. But funny enough, I heard that the Chick-fil-A here, our favorite one that we all go to in Boerne, they have 500 employees. So when you think about it, it's like just that one location.
That's incredible.
500 employees, they're not eligible. Well, obviously they're a chain, but you know, it's bigger than you think, but smaller than you think. But anyway, so they have to have less than 500 employees, and they've got to be majority owned by U.S. citizens or other small businesses that are owned by U.S. citizens. So it's got to be, you know, the money they intend to stay here. Also, all the work done on an SBIR has to be done in the States. And so those are kind of the eligibility criteria. There's also this kind of a misnomer. Well, it's an older way of thinking of the SBIR, is that you couldn't be majority owned by venture capital or hedge funds or VCOC is what they call them, venture capital operating companies. And while that's true with some of the programs, largely the DoD is like getting past that. I mean, Air Force is pretty much waiving that requirement altogether. So you can be majority owned by venture capital, hedge funds, operating companies, but you have to look at the specific solicitation, right? Each agency runs a little bit different. So Air Force is different than Army and Navy.
Well, Sam, I really appreciate you sitting down with us. And when we come back from the break, I want to dive into why this region in Texas is so important to the rest of the country. But you're sitting here, we're talking to Sam Riehn, who is with SBIR Advisors here in Boerne. And we're thrilled to get to know you. After the break, we're going to dive into why is Central Texas really moving the needle. This is Justin McKenzie from Building Texas. Today's segment is brought to you by Das Greenhouse. Das Greenhouse is a business incubator launched here in Boerne to serve our local community. Das Greenhouse is a place where you can come to grow your idea. Our goal is to make Boerne accessible to people who are looking to grow a business, expand a business, or learn more about what's out there in their community and get involved. Visit us at dasgreenhouse.org or come visit us at 7 Upper Balcones Road, Boerne, Texas. Das Greenhouse. Welcome back to Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. Thank you for those that are listening to us live on the radio. And please know that it's recorded and pushed out on Mondays after we were aired on the radio. So we want to make sure we can tell Sam's story, not only locally here on Boerne Radio, but share that vision with the rest of the world and the rest of your community, because you have a national footprint. SBIR Advisors has been a very successful organization relatively quickly. I think you founded in 2019. And I know you've made an impact with companies like Local that are here in town and other companies that are using SBIR Advisors to help understand this process and go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were founded in August or maybe I think it was early September of 2020. So this was like almost our 3-year birthday, but yeah, I appreciate that. We are working with a number of Boerne companies, but this area is so strategic for us because like I was mentioning before the break, you've got this $1 billion program up in Austin, Texas, but they don't have any DoD up there. There's no, besides the AFWorks, program managers, and you've got Army Futures Command, which is a small organization. You have, those buyers up there, you don't have end users. You don't have actual like customers. And so they're all down here in San Antonio and in Military City, USA. And what's cool about Boerne is you have this, massive community of military in and around San Antonio. A lot of them retire and they stay here. They move to Boerne. So we've got a large community of military supporters or prior military people who have network in the military or people who understand the needs of the DoD and the mission, and they still care about it. So it's very, very active still in the national security space here in Boerne. And that's because you have this massive amount of customers in San Antonio, and not just from DoD, but you also have like NSA Texas and some of the other larger organizations down there. It's really cool. So you have this $1 billion budget up there, and then you have multi-billion-dollar programs like Unified Platform, the 16th Air Force, all those guys down here. You have 59th Medical Wing, and all the military medical in San Antonio. So it's really cool crossroads of customers that we can go get money for up in Austin and bring it down here and work with these guys. But yeah, we are nationwide. So we got 40 guys or 40 people on our team, all spread all over the America.
So in 3 years, that's incredible. And I recognize the impact because I see you. San Antonio Business Journal did a wonderful article about you and your work, and you've really brought a new culture to this buying process and to the advisors. And I know that because you really can be a servant leader in that role. How do you help small businesses? What are the problems that they're facing when they're trying to engage with the DoD, but maybe they don't have a military background? Maybe they've never experienced that buying process. How do you help them?
Yeah, great question. So these guys, small business, often I find the biggest challenge they have is they don't know who their customers are, where they are, or how to find them within the DoD. They think about Air Force. They think everybody in the Air Force flies. It's not true. There's a lot going on in the Air Force, but they don't know where to find these guys. And it's arguably hard to find them and figure out who is the decision maker, who has budget, who's in charge of buying, and then who has problems or missions that align with my technology. And then when you find that person, making sure that you hang on to them because they move every 2 years. And so the DoD doesn't make it easy, but that's what we do is we're heavily focused on business development and finding the right customers. So we come at this from a little bit different approach than a lot of small business getting started in DoD. The traditional approach is to sit around and wait for a request for quote. So you're skimming what, sam.gov and trying to find a solicitation publicly posted that aligns with your technology or your capabilities. And then you're bidding on that and you're trying to like outbid or underbid the other people and get in that way. And that's kind of I see that as a very passive approach. You're sitting around waiting for someone to ask for your technology. And we have a little bit different formula. So we're more on the active approach. We're trying to go find customers, get you talking to the engineers or the program managers or the clinicians, have a conversation with these people. And then you'll find they talk the same language that you do, and once we just get you talking to that customer, like, oh, they do have the same problems and needs as they do on the commercial side. Let's talk about it. And now they know who you are. They know your company and what you provide. And now we just have to go find a way to do business with this customer. So it's, go get funding from SBIR or figure out, maybe that customer, this is rare, but maybe the customer has their own dollars. They're like, hey, it's your lucky day. I had a program, cancel and I've got spare budget for this year. They still run into this problem of, well, you're a startup. I have no idea how to work with a startup. Like my normal, business or course of action is I go to GSA and I look through, I try to buy off of one of their large IDIQ contracts, or maybe they have an internal IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. It's like a catalog. Yep. They're like, you're not on my catalog. How do I buy you? And so that's half the battle is figuring out, okay, if a customer has money, it's an access problem. How do we get that money on contract? And we kind of help coach them through that, like going sole source and stuff.
Well, what I hear you saying is you take the mystery of the military DoD element out of the way, and really it turns into more a requirements planning, user feedback. You put them in the loop of what I would say is a normal startup needs to go through, understanding their customer, understanding their product fit,
Absolutely.
It's more complicated when you have to understand the buying policy and where budgets come from, everything else.
Right.
So to me, it sounds like SBIR Advisors really brings some clarity to that, gives them a roadmap as a founder to focus on their solution while you're making it easier to find the money and find the buyer.
I love that. I mean, I think you cut right through that. I haven't thought of it that way, but the way you just said that, yeah, you're exactly right. We want to put you across the table from the customer so you can do your normal sales call. You can talk to them about their problems and how you can solve their problems, and then we'll handle all the policy and paperwork and contracting and everything that comes along with it.
Well, it's been a really educational conversation so far to me around how the system works, really the advancements that we're making. And I applaud, you mentioned the doctor's name that took over SBIR and this, bringing it into a modern era, because you're talking about fun technologies. You're talking about, we've spent some time looking at drone companies, satellite companies that are really pushing an envelope, whether it's in warfighting or healthcare and other elements of really serving people in the way that our military is a humanitarian military as well. It's exciting to hear it. And I want to bring it back locally and talk about Boerne, because that's the beauty that we have in the rooms. And we spend time in the Angel Network together. We spend time outside of that as well. But even just sitting in that room, the people and experience around us in Boerne, Texas really does open up tremendous conversations, whether you run into somebody that's really well-versed in cyber or you run into somebody that's actually building satellites here locally and you just didn't know that was happening.
Yep.
But it's happening in Kendall County. So talk to me more about your vision of local, because you've talked about Austin has got the money, San Antonio's got the people. You and I've shared conversation in the past about what the Hill Country has that might bring that together.
Well, yeah. So the Hill Country has capital, I believe. So the draw of Austin for the longest time was, VC, and there's a startup scene in San Antonio, but what they're really struggling or striving for, or what they're starving for, that's the word.
That's the word.
is venture capital. They need people to fund their ideas. And for the longest time, they've had to go up I-35, go to Austin to look for that. And I think, yeah, maybe if you're making Facebook ads or you're selling something on Shopify, that's the consumer maybe place to go. If you're looking for national security, you want to do dual use, like meaning I've got a product that'll work on the defense side and commercial use cases, but you want to be focused on selling DoD, or you want to sell to national security agencies. Boerne has capital, and they have a love of that mission. There's tons of patriots out here, right? It's like to say, a lot of them are former military, and a lot of them, exited companies of their own that were defense companies, and so they understand the mission, they understand the market, the industry, and I think there's a huge opportunity to come out here and find a great community of people who understand what you're trying to do. And of course, I've stayed here because I love it. It's not just everybody here is cares about DoD and national security. It's a great place to raise kids. I've got all my children are in the school system, which is phenomenal. And then the food's great too. So.
Well, next week we're going to be interviewing Dr. Tommy Price to talk about this. He's the superintendent of Boerne ISD, and we're going to be talking about that quality of life, because that is what brings people to Boerne. It's what brings people like you to Boerne. And if I look around the room, the number of academy graduates that live here is impressive as well, because of the quality of life. They had an experience in San Antonio and really fell in love with the Hill Country, retired here, and run their businesses here. And I appreciate what you're saying about the Hill Country as capital. Everybody goes up I-35. They hang out in the Texas Triangle, Houston, Austin, Dallas. Sometimes we include San Antonio. But if we have the room out here, we should be having these conversations. And we've seen that. You've seen SBIR be very successful with local companies to make an impact and give them insights and pathways to capital and success at the DoD level. I just appreciate, I love the story. In 3 years, congratulations on what you've been able to do in 3 years, the the work that I know you're doing, 40 employees around the country going out and drumming up business. Quite an accomplishment, and I appreciate having you in our community.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I love what you're doing with the startup ecosystem here. Everything you've done with Angel Network, with DOS Greenhouse, and now with this Boerne Radio. It's amazing. The education and really you're getting the word out, and I love it because it's drawing, it's adding even more to this great community.
You're listening to Building Texas on Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. We've had an absolute pleasure sitting down with Sam Riehn today and learning more about SBIR Advisors and the impact they're having locally and the way they are building Texas. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
This is Amy Story with the Boerne-Kendall County Economic Development Corporation. Join us on Tuesday, October 24th for Kendall County's first Economic Summit at the Bevy Hotel for this half-day event to learn more about the businesses and opportunities here in Kendall County. This event is being brought to you by the San Antonio Business Journal and the Boerne-Kendall County Economic Development Corporation. Sponsorships are still available, and individual tickets can be purchased through the San Antonio Business Journal or online at the BKC EDC website. That's www.bkcedc.com. You don't want to miss this opportunity to hear from local business leaders as well as representatives from the City of Boerne and Kendall County. Panel discussions include infrastructure planning, and hear from the people and entities involved in the creation of our entrepreneurial ecosystem. Get your tickets before the event sells out. After the Economic Summit, DOS Greenhouse, Boerne's first business incubator, will host an open house. So come out and see the community's place to support and grow entrepreneurs, innovators, founders, and startups right here in Kendall County. That's www.bkcedc.com.